This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what an attack! What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Another Monday after an Eagles loss to touch on here in 2020. Welcome to 2020 Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig here with you for the next hour. Of course, you can jump on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. 609-403-0973. Coming up on the show, Johnny Avello. He's the director of the DraftKings Sportsbook. He'll be joining us to talk a little NFL. As NFL Week 5 is extending to Tuesday night. You can hear all the action from Monday and Tuesday Night Football here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, the Tuesday night game is a side effect of the whole COVID-19 situation. So you'll have the Bills versus the Titans on Tuesday Night Football. Tonight, it's Chargers versus Saints on Monday Night Football. So we got a lot of NFL going on this week. Also, a little bit later in the show, we'll do a little bit of accountability on my picks from the weekend. Good news, we were above 500. That's also the bad news. That's coming up about 35 minutes from now. Again, 609-403-0973 is the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. You know, when you look back at the Eagles' loss, there's a couple things that really, really stand out to me from that loss. And I've been listening to all the reaction from the listeners throughout the day, the anytime hotline calls that we gathered, all that stuff. And everything I've heard has not deterred me from one of the things that stood out to me in this game. In this game, there were two major reasons why they lost. And I'm sorry that it's not Nate Gary covering Chase Claypool that triggered me like some other people. The number one thing that stood out to me was the Philadelphia Eagles defense got neutralized by a better quarterback and a better offense and a better opposing coach. The Philadelphia Eagles obviously have an issue on defense when it comes to their linebackers. And thus far, Jim Schwartz has been able to do nothing this year to cover up those deficiencies with the linebackers and the overlays in the secondary with all the injuries they have out. Because let's not forget, you know Avonte Maddox yesterday. Remember, no Will Parks so far this year. He was supposed to be a big part of this team. So some of the players that you brought in for specific reasons are not out there. You had back-to-back weeks where you had over 15 quarterback hits versus the Bengals and versus the 49ers. Yesterday, you only had two. And this is what happens when you have a team coming off of a bye week, as the Steelers were because of the COVID-19 situation with the calendar reshuffling. The NFL schedule has basically been thrown on its head at this point. You have a team with an experienced offensive coordinator who is literally only the offensive coordinator because he's friends with Ben Roethlisberger and they have a great working relationship. So you have a quarterback and an offensive coordinator who are in sync with each other. And they saw, look at all the times, that the Rams, the Bengals, how they manipulated the Eagles' defense. Look at all the ways that George Kittle got open for wide open plays. So they literally just took it to the next level. They ran tons of misdirection, end arounds, screens. Now, could have Jim Schwartz adjusted better? He could have. But would it really have made a difference? Let's be realistic. When Duke Riley went out that point in the game, and you saw him go into the locker room, you thought, who's left? And the fact that you have your linebackers are Nate Gary, Alex Singleton, Duke Riley, a rookie in Davion Taylor, and a rookie in Sean Bradley. By the way, Sean Bradley did have one nice play yesterday in the game. There's only so much the front four can do to make up for that deficiency. And what did the Steelers do? They constantly manipulated the Eagles' defense. The Eagles' defense kept over-pursuing. The Eagles' defense kept being put out of position. And I understand that everyone looks at the Gary versus Claypool touchdown and points their finger at that. But that was just a culmination of the evening. Once you're in the fourth quarter, Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers know exactly what you're doing. And they understand how you've attempted to try to stop them. And they're just going out there and building on the game they already have. So don't look so much at the end play. Look at the entire game and realize that the entire game was building up to that Claypool touchdown. He didn't stop him the first 3 times. The Steelers just kept going to him. And I'm not going to sit here and run Jim Schwartz over the coals. Okay, this is not the Rams game, all right? That game yesterday comes down to the fact that somebody somewhere thought the Philadelphia Eagles were better and well enough off with Gary, Riley, TJ Edwards, Davion Taylor, Sean Bradley, and Duke Riley, and all those guys, and Alex Singleton, that was good enough. Somebody somewhere thought those guys were good enough. And somebody somewhere thought that they had enough personnel to overcome those deficiencies. And whoever's idea that was, whether that's Howie Roseman or his right-hand man, Andy Weidel, who was brought to this organization, though, by Joe Douglas, by the way. He was a long time in the Ravens organization, Andy Weidel. Whether it was some other analytics dude somewhere on the coaching staff at the front office, whether it was Doug Peterson, I highly doubt it was Jim Schwartz, just based on what I understand about Jim Schwartz as a general principle. So whoever thought this was a good idea, this is their fault. You want to know why the Eagles lost to the Steelers yesterday? Because the defense didn't have the players available. It's bad enough you have this weak core of linebackers, but then you're without Avonte Maddox. And Nickel Roby-Coleman is not playing that well. No Will Parks. Darius Slay is knocked out of the game yesterday. You are down to the backups against an offense with a future Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger, tons of freaks of talent on the field like Claypool and Ebron and Schuster. I mean, you have tons of dudes who are just freak talents. Oh, and don't forget about James Conner and Benny Snell in the backfield. I believe the Eagles are going to lose all along. And I predicted it on Friday. I predicted it on Saturday. I was all over these airwaves telling you that I didn't think the Eagles had the firepower to keep up. That's the second thing I took away from this game. The Philadelphia Eagles scored 29 points in the game yesterday. It's only the 5th time they've done that in the last 17 games played. So in the last 17 games, every one of them, they have scored under 29 points except for 5 times. So an entire season's worth of football, and they could only score at least 29 points 5 times. That is a doggone embarrassment. See, everyone wants to point to, oh man, let me tell you about Jim Schwartz. No. Let me tell you something. The Philadelphia Eagles still found a way to not score 30 points. And even when they did score 29, it's only the 5th time they've done it in 17 games. That is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. At what point is someone going to stand up and ask a question about this offense? At some point, someone needs to ask the question, how did we go from a top 5 offense when we won the Super Bowl to a team that can barely score enough points to be average in the NFL? I don't understand it. It blows my mind. It's mind-boggling to me that they are in this situation. It makes 0 sense to me. It makes 0 sense to me that in this league, somebody somewhere doesn't look around and say, well, that's a problem. It's like, thanks. I appreciate you being Captain Obvious. See, it's not just the Claypool stuff. I know that frustrates a lot of people today. And I know a lot of people are angry at Jim Schwartz and so on and so forth. But let's keep it 100. The Philadelphia Eagles are just not putting out a great NFL product each and every week. They're just not. And somewhere along the way, at some point in time, in some far galaxy away, somebody has to realize some alternate reality that as the Eagles are playing each and every week, it's just not good enough. 609-403 on PlaySugarHouse.com text board. 609-403-0973 for the text board. When I look around the NFL, and I watch a lot of football. I'm one of those guys, all right? I watch a lot of football, and when I'm watching football, I see tons of teams being able to put up points. Tons of them. But yet the Eagles just can't. This season, the Philadelphia Eagles, after yesterday's game, are averaging 22.6 points per game. The team with the most points per game are the Packers. Number 2 is the Seahawks. Number 3 is the Cowboys. Number 4 is the Browns. 5 is the Bills. 6 is the Saints. Raiders are 7. 7 teams in the NFL average over 30 points per game. 3 more teams average just under 30 points per game. Those teams happen to be the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Steelers. After them, 3 more teams average 27 points per game. That would be the Bucks, the Rams, and the doggone Dolphins with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So let me tell you all something. You can point the finger at Nate Gary and Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz and whoever heck else you want. You can point at all of them. But you want to know why this team is where they are right now? It's because somebody in this organization, number 1, thought that this roster was good enough. And number 2, someone in this organization doesn't have the spine to walk into Doug Peterson's office and say, Doug, you're an offensive-minded coach. Why are we at 22.6 points per game? The rest of the league is able to get 26 and more points per game. The Miami Dolphins are scoring more than you. How is that possible? How is it possible that the Minnesota Vikings, who started out the year putrid, have found a way to score more points than you? The 49ers, whose offense is like a dumpster fire, who are playing with backup quarterbacks, have scored more points this year than you. The Atlanta Falcons, who have not won a game this year, who fired their head coach, have scored more points than you. And if I'm Doug, I turn to whoever that person is saying to me and say, let me ask you a question. Why did you think that this roster was good enough to be a contending football team? Someone has to get up and ask the tough questions. And honestly, listening to Doug Peterson's press conference earlier today, as you heard it every Monday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN at 2:30, I'm telling you right here, right now, Doug didn't want to answer those questions. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Dan in the EHC says Jim Schwartz would be a good coach for the 85 defense, loaded with talent. Then again, he wouldn't run a 46 defense. Forget that. They would stink too. The upside is the last 3 games, the Eagles are 1-1-1, and and they're scoring more points each game. Well, a couple things. First of all, your assessment of Jim Schwartz and EHD is completely incorrect. Because if Jim Schwartz stinks, then everybody in the NFL not named Bill Belichick stinks at defense too. Every single one. Because Jim Schwartz is no worse than the majority of the other defense coordinators in the league. Romeo Crennel and Steve Spagnuolo and all the other D coordinators in the league are only as good as their talent as well. There is very rarely coaches who elevate their players beyond what they are in the NFL. It is what it is. Unless your name is Bill Belichick, you're not taking whatever dudes and turning them into superstars. It almost never happens in the NFL. And the reason why there's not a ton of great defensive coordinators anymore is because the offenses are so far ahead of the defenses when it comes to scheming and game planning and execution nowadays. The reason why Rex Ryan is on your TV every morning, on Get Up on ESPN television, and he's not on the sidelines is because the offenses in this league ran him out of the league after 2 jobs. Talent, if you don't have it, doesn't matter. It's not about Jim Schwartz being a bad coach. If Jim Schwartz was a bad coach, he wouldn't still be in the league right now. It's as simple as that. With them, your text just a little bit later in the show, 609-403-0973. Coming up next on the other side, DraftKings director of their sportsbook, Johnny Avello, joins me here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Keep the text coming at 609-403-0973. Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you and joining us right now on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. He's the director of the DraftKings Sportsbook. The one and the only Johnny Avello joins us here on 97.3 ESPN. Talk some NFL. It's been a crazy and wild NFL season. Johnny, how you doing on this Monday?
I am excellent, Josh. Thank you.
Johnny, I got to ask you, this season has, the whole year has been like anything else any of us have experienced, but, just look at the NFL season as a whole. There's probably a part of you that's saying, thank God football's here, but there's another part of you that's saying, what is going on with football? This year has been totally nuts. We got a game on Tuesday night this week, no Thursday night game. We have teams that we didn't think would be any good, teams that are skyrocketing, teams that are falling. 2 head coaches have already been fired.
Yeah, Josh, I like the Tuesday night game. I don't like the way it's been going, but it's how we get there. But I do like the Tuesday night game. It's been a crazy year. We've got some teams starting the seasons undefeated. Quite a few teams. We got some teams can't get out of their own way. Maybe this whole preseason that we didn't have has a lot to do with this. Maybe these teams, at least some of them, of course, you take the Packers and the Saints and some of these other teams, they were clicking on all cylinders when we started the season. But maybe the defenses needed time to catch up, and maybe just the coaches didn't have the game plan ready to go, and therefore, things haven't worked out right for some teams, and some of those coaches are now gone.
Yeah, injuries happen every year, but it just feels like things are more exasperated, like you said, because without those preseason games, it just feels like some of these teams, we were just talking about the Eagles here in our backyard, and it's like this team took 3 weeks to just get up and going. It feels like a lot of these teams, outside of the handful you just mentioned, some of these teams, it took them 3 weeks to just figure out they were playing football this year.
Boy, I'll tell you, the whole NFC East is just a mess, isn't it? At one time, you could have said that was the best division in football, and these guys have fallen to an all-time low.
Yeah, speaking of the NFC East, this Eagles team, they're 1-1-1 in their last 3 games. The Cowboys lose Dak Prescott for the rest of the year. The Giants look like one of the worst teams in all of football, if you even include college football, maybe. And then you look at the Washington football team, and they're hanging on to that one win they got in the first week. Alex Smith is a nice story. What do you even do with the NFC East at this point when you're trying to project who's going to win this division?
Well, the Cowboys are still the favorite at even money, and the Eagles are plus 120, which is 6-5. You know, and then so Dak's out with the fractured ankle, and in steps Andy Dalton. Now, Andy Dalton had a good rest of the game. He was 9 for 11, had little over 100 yards. He's got some really good receivers there. You know, he's used to throwing a good receiver when he was at Bengals and A.J. Green. He's got C.C. Lamb. He's got Michael Gallup. So he's got some weapons there. Both teams, I mean, the chances of the Eagles catching the Cowboys is going to be really difficult because both teams have to play the West. And when I say the West, we're talking the Rams and Seahawks and, and 49ers. And it's tough to to play against those teams. Now, I believe the Eagles probably have, the Seahawks cards left. They got some other tough games too: Saints, Packers, Ravens, and then the Cowboys. They have the Cardinals, Steelers, 49ers, Vikings. So their schedule is a little bit easier than the Eagles' schedule. But I think what it'll come down to is, can the Eagles beat the Cowboys twice? Because that's what it's going to take for them to be able to jump them.
Well, they're going to have a chance at least in a couple of weeks to try to make that happen. And, you look at the Eagles' schedule, now they got the Giants and the Cowboys coming up after the Ravens. I just feel like whoever comes out of the NFC East, I mean, it's probably going to be an 8-8 team basically because of the way the division is. And you mentioned that NFC West. I mean, the NFC West is probably the best division in all the NFL this year, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think 8-8 is probably tops. I don't think anybody's going to surpass that. And it's even possible that a 7-9 gets there with Dak, not participating. With Dak in there, I felt pretty comfortable that the Cowboys would probably get 8 wins. Not so sure of that now.
Johnny Avello joining us here on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. He's the DraftKings Sportsbook Director. And, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles make DraftKings the team's official daily fantasy sports partner and official sports betting partner. So the Philadelphia Eagles and DraftKings tied at the hip now, which is a pretty cool deal, especially considering that DraftKings app. I got to say, Johnny, the app has always been pretty good, but the layout seems to get better with each update.
That's right, and that's what it's all about is updates. Keep making it better. We developed that app. The guys worked really hard on it. They try to make it easy to navigate. It's certainly easy to upload and withdraw money. And it's, we have just a ton of content on there. So if you can't find what you're looking for, it probably doesn't exist.
Oh, I agree with that 100% because sometimes, and I'm not going to name anybody else just for the sake of this conversation, but there are some other people out there with sportsbook apps and it's not user-friendly. And I love the fact that the Eagles partner with DraftKings because of the fact that it literally is such a user-friendly interface. And I think some people, they overlook that sometimes. It's not always about all the frills. It's about, can somebody go on there and actually enjoy using the platform? Yeah,
and that's what you want, a good experience. Even if you don't have, sports betting in your jurisdiction yet, we still allow people to go on and play these free pools. So even if, you want to just try it out, you can try it out from anywhere, even like California and states that don't have sports wagering yet. And we do some really cool stuff on there, and I'm sure you've participated in, like, presidential debate pools and what's the weather going to be in certain cities today. That's all fun stuff. And you'll get to probably gamble on those things at, sometime down the road. Some of the things we've been able to do already, we did the hot dog eating contest. We've done the Oscars a couple times, done the Emmys. So it's changing. Sportsbook is changing, and, we're changing along with it.
You've been working in the industry for a long time. How cool is it for someone like yourself to have seen how the sports betting world has evolved over the years from where you were in years past and now what you're seeing with DraftKings?
So cool, really is. If you asked me, 7 years ago or so, I would have told you that sports betting would not be nationwide. It wasn't going to happen. I just didn't see a path to get there. And then when PASPA was overturned, that was an exciting day. And when DraftKings came after me, I just had to be part of it.
Speaking with Johnny Avello here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, director of the DraftKings Sportsbook. Johnny, let's get back to the NFL as a whole. Let's flip over to the AFC because obviously tomorrow night we have the Bills and the Titans. Folks can hear that right here on 97.3 ESPN. This Titans team, they haven't played in weeks, and I'm looking over at college football because I'm a huge college football guy, and I'm seeing the impact of certain teams who have these late season starts. They're off for a few weeks, and it impacts them in different ways. And I kind of have to wonder, looking at the Titans now, trying to resume their season, this is a team that was probably a favorite for a lot of people in the AFC South. And now, with all this time off, are they still in the driver's seat, or is this a team that maybe might go sideways?
Well, any of that you just said could happen. The COVID had 23 players knocked out of playing, and so that's just a big hit. They're still a favorite to win the South. They're minus 115, which is like betting a football game, A versus B. Colts are the second choice at 6-5. The Texans have a long way to go if they need to get back into it. They finally picked up a win. They're 9-1, and the Jags are pretty much out of it at over 60-1. 3-0 still, though. That's the amazing thing is this team's still 3-0 and pick up a win against a Bill team. He could be 4-0. Don't know what to expect. I really don't. It's a tough call here. It's a tough team to bet.
It's definitely tough to bet, but it's also, think about what happened in baseball season. We saw teams like the Marlins, for example, miss a huge chunk of the season. They resume and somehow they make the playoffs. I mean, it seems like, at least in baseball, teams were able to miss time and make something out of the season. I think it's fair to assume that, in football, the condensedness of the season is really going to be a test of a lot of these guys' wills. I think back to what Andy Reid said before the season. He said, hey, the team that stays focused and doesn't, bleep up is a team that's probably going to win it all this year.
Yeah, well, the one difference between baseball and this is that in baseball, everybody was off and started at the same time. Whereas this, everybody started at the same time, and the team has taken a couple of weeks off. So, they're kind of at a disadvantage here. The only advantage you would have is if you had a lot of injuries, and that wasn't the case. So, if you want to call COVID an injury, I guess you could.
Well, at least the NFL is quantifying it that way. Speaking of injuries, what are your thoughts on this game today? We got to hear on 97.3 ESPN Monday Football. Michael Thomas was supposed to return, but he punched his teammate, and that's why he's not playing tonight. So the Saints are going into a game versus a very hot young quarterback in Justin Herbert.
Yeah, disciplinary actions, they're calling it. Disciplinary suspension. Yeah. Everybody gets to see Justin Herbert. It was really good last week. It was 290 yards passing with only one interception. And I say only one interception because, these rookies are susceptible to make a lot of mistakes. This kid's been solid. 20 for 25. So you get to see him, and you're going to see certainly a dose full of Kamara because – he's a guy that really makes that team go. Michael Thompson's kind of a hit for the Saints, but they'll use Kamara any way they can, and that's one of our props tonight. Will Kamara be the first touchdown scorer? And that thing's getting hit pretty good all day long. I think he was 5.5 to 1 at one time, and now he's down below 5. So a lot of props also to play on tonight's game.
Johnny Avello joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, DraftKings Sportsbook Director. Johnny, is there anything that surprised you so far about this season, whether it's a team or a player or any situation that has really surprised you didn't see coming?
Well, there's a lot that's happened during the year. I didn't see the Giants. I'm a Giant fan for a long time. I didn't see the Giants being this bad. But nothing really surprises me because being in the business and the sportsbook side of it for 35 years, I've pretty much seen everything. So, well, that's not true. I'm taking that back, Josh. I've seen a lot, and there's probably a lot more to come. No, nothing surprises me any longer.
You mentioned the Giants. As a Giants fan, are you happy with Joe Judge? Are you frustrated with? I mean, the guy just seems like a bit of an enigma to me at this point.
Yeah, when you lose your star running back like that, and this kid, I mean, I loved him as a selection for the Giants when they took him in the first round. When you lose somebody like that, it's time to go to plan B and C. It just makes it tough. That's all. I don't know. When you lose main players, it's hard to keep it together.
It really is. Well, at least maybe they're on track to get Trevor Lawrence, so maybe they got that going for them, right?
Well, I don't know. I think they had their hopes set on Jones being their guy, and so although it hasn't panned out so far, and it's still early in his career, you still have to give him some time. I don't think that's where the Giants will go. I think that the Giants are known on trying to bring in defensive players, offensive linemen. That's usually their MO in the draft. I couldn't see them taking Trevor Lawrence.
Well, maybe Gettleman will fall out of love with Dalen Jones and fall in love with Trevor Lawrence. You never know. Or maybe he'll fall in love with somebody else that we don't even know about yet. Gettleman's a strange character too,
Agree.
He's Johnny Avello. He's the director of the DraftKings Sportsbook. Make sure you follow the DK Sportsbook on Twitter, DK Sportsbook. They're always putting out all the lines and the bets and the offers they got going on of the DraftKings Sportsbook. Of course, you can download it for your phone as well. Great, easy-to-use platform. And don't forget, DraftKings is now the official daily fantasy sports partner and official sports betting partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. Johnny Avello has joined us today on the Boardwalk on the hotline on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Johnny, appreciate the time and the conversation.
You're welcome, Josh. Have a good day.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Game Night being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. We'll get back to the text board next at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
609-403-0973 for the PlaySugarHouse.com. Text board, of course, we'll get to my accountability. How did I do in week 6 of the college football season? I have to remind myself, it's week 5 of the NFL season, but it's only week 6 of the college football season. It's so ridiculous. Try to keep all that track. 609-403-0973, the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. Lee and Buna chimes in on the text board and says, does Dak going down increase the Eagles' chance of climbing in the NFC East? I tend to think so, and here's why, Lee, and I appreciate the question. Number one, I think that the Eagles, they still have enough talent to be a playoff team. I don't think they're a team that can make a run to a Super Bowl at all. I don't think that they have the linebackers. I don't think they have the wide receiver depth. Without Lane Johnson, I mean, who knows what's going on with him? I mean, he had to leave in the game again. Doug Peterson was very vague on his situation. I mean, Lane Johnson said last week he had to have a cyst drained in his ankle. I mean, what is going on with this guy? But I don't believe in Andy Dalton with the Cowboys. I understand the guy's been to however many playoff, I think it was 5 straight with the Bengals during a stretch. But every time he got to the playoffs, he didn't do anything. And I understand he's a lot of talent, but that defense is so poor. Like, we get frustrated with the Eagles' defense. Look at the Cowboys' defense. The Cowboys' defense this week against the lowly Giants. I mean, you heard the long-suffering Giants fan, Johnny Avello, just on a few minutes ago. The Cowboys allowed 34 points to a Giants team without Saquon Barkley. That's how bad the Cowboys' defense is. Even the Eagles' defense was able to limit the 49ers with the second and third string quarterbacks to 20 points. All right? I mean, come on. Like, so to me, it's what is going to overcome? Who's going to figure out their situation faster? Is it going to be the Eagles situation or the Cowboys? I tend to think it's the Eagles for this reason. Mike Nolan, I don't believe in Mike Nolan as a defensive coordinator. I don't believe in Mike McCarthy as a head coach. I think Mike McCarthy, he had Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. Mike McCarthy has to prove to me that he can win with Andy Dalton moving forward. Okay? We always talk about how rough the Eagles' schedule coming up is. Well, the Cowboys isn't exactly great either during a stretch. There's a stretch later in the year where they still have to play the Steelers. They still have to play the Ravens. The 49ers, by the time they play them, will be healthier than they are now. The Cardinals are no pushover next Monday night. And the Vikings are trying to figure it out right now. And if they figure it out, they could be trouble for the Cowboys as well. And considering the fact that Joe Burrow has played well this year, I was surprised the Bengals scored 40 points on the Cowboys. So we always talk about how the Eagles' schedule is tough. The Cowboys are not exactly, a walk in the park either. So Liam Bune, that's a good question by you. 609-403-0973 on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. Texter says, do you have any info on us about Mike Thomas punching Malcolm Jenkins in the face? First of all, he didn't punch Malcolm Jenkins. It was their other safety, and I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head. I'm gonna pull up the story again because it wasn't Malcolm Jenkins. Now the story was reported. I'm trying to remember, was it Tom Pelissero of NFL Network? It might have been him, but let's see here. Mike Thomas. It was the other safety he punched. Here's Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's the safety's name. Say that 5 times, fans. Yeah, Tom Pelissero reported it was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Now, the reason why the Mike Thomas situation is a little significant is because Gardner-Johnson and Thomas got into a fight last season as well. So apparently they don't like each other very much. They have a history of not getting along. So, maybe there's more to this story than we actually know about them fighting in practice. And maybe the punching of everything, maybe there's a lot more to know. It was not Malcolm Jenkins. It was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, a guy that Thomas got into a fight with during practice last season as well. 609-403-0973 on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. Dan from EHT follows up and says, Eagles defense couldn't stop one play. Schwartz is all front four pressure or bust. Maybe if the Eagles had Reggie White, Charles Haley, Jerome Brown, and Aaron O'Donnell, but we ain't going to see that. Well, again, Dan, I think you're being a little bit extreme there. I know it's an overreaction Monday, but now you're trying to play the Patino game with the Eagles. The Eagles won the Super Bowl with that kind of front. They won it with Vinnie Curry and Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox and Tim Jernigan and Chris Long rotating in. And Derek Barnett, that was his rookie year, I believe? Yeah, I think it was his rookie year. Anyway, they showed you they can win games up front. The reason why they were able to beat the 49ers and be in a position to tie the Bengals was because of the fact that defense was getting 15-plus quarterback hits in each of those games. It's not that Schwartz can't win unless he has a bunch of Hall of Famers, because they need a bunch of Hall of Famers. What he needs is competent players after that front. Because if you go back and watch his years when he was the D coordinator with the Titans, and then later the head coach with the Lions, he had some great players up front. But what he also had was some very high-level linebackers. They had guys like Keith Bullock over there in Tennessee, right? So they had great pass rushers up front who they got a lot out of. But he also had linebackers who were able to go out there and be guys that he could depend on. And I think that's a big deal. You got to have linebackers you can depend on who are not going to ignore his teammate when he's telling him, hey, you got to move. Hey, you got to do something. Hey. He had Stephen Tulloch, for example. Okay? Smart, heady, reliable linebacker in Detroit. As I mentioned, Keith Bullock in Tennessee. So this attitude that Jim Schwartz is so bad, and I understand. It's an overreaction Monday. It's very frustrating. But Schwartz's scheme is not terrible. And the reason why I keep saying that is because scheme is only as good as the players playing in the scheme. Now, could Jim Schwartz do a better job at accentuating the strengths of some of his players? Probably. And I think that's a part of the reason why they have the new secondary coach, Massaquoi, not just because Corey Unlin got hired by the Lions, but because they wanted to bring in somebody who brought a different vision to the team. And I think that we have to look at the secondary and say, for the most part, they're okay. They're not great, but they're okay. I don't think firing the linebackers coach is going to fix the problem, but you just don't have the talent. It's pretty simple. The Eagles just don't have talent on defense. And listen, maybe the offense, as they keep getting a little better, again, they scored 29 points, 25 the week before. If the offense keeps trending in this direction and Travis Fulgham keeps having good plays, and if Zach Ertz can get over whatever the issues are that are holding him back, all right, if Dallas Goedert gets back on the field, if D-Jax can play at least another 8 games this year, maybe this team can turn around and maybe this team can get off the ground and do some things. But I'm not going to sit here and be 100% confident that's going to happen. I still think that I need to see them do it a couple more times. And they're probably going to lose to the Ravens. It's a very tough game. But they can beat the Giants and the Cowboys. And I think that that's going to be the litmus test. If they can beat the Giants and the Cowboys and then go into that bye, maybe you got a chance. And maybe then you can gain some momentum, get to the bye, get healed up, and then take on the second half of your schedule with a little bit more gusto. 609-403-0973 for the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. Accountability time for yours truly. College football picks over the weekend went 4-3. That's the good news. 4-3 is also the bad news. First of all, I am never, ever going to talk about Duke and Syracuse here again unless it's a big spread to cover. I thought Duke was the worst team in the ACC. Apparently, Syracuse is. And everything I thought about Duke, you could throw out the window. I was completely wrong about that. The 3 other games from the early slate of games that I did get right. Very excited about Texas, Oklahoma. What a great game. 2 overtimes. That hit the over easily. How about South Jersey's own Devin Leary? I told you about him. Timber Creek's Devin Leary. 2 more touchdown passes against Virginia. Snapped their 9-game home winning streak. NC State went outright. They covered that plus 7.5. Florida and Texas A&M, another wild game. Over 58.5. Hit that. What didn't hit on the overs, Texas Tech and Iowa State way under. Kansas State, TCU way under. There were a lot of injuries in the Kansas State TU game. A lot of players missed playing time in that game, either right before the game or during the game they were injured. So that took a hit on the game. Texas Tech, they're just a mess right now. I don't know if they're going to ever get that thing figured out over there. Iowa State looks pretty good after a rough start to the year. Finally, our game, last game we got Temple at Navy. Navy won the game outright. That was a plus 3.5. So some good opportunities. Hopefully we can get back to a little bit better than 4-3 this weekend.